Welcome to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. I'm here with Matt Schlapp.
How are you, sweetheart? You good?
We're doing great. It's Holy Week.
It's a special week.
Yep, the kids are going to get out of school soon, so
that's not so good.
I would agree. But let's jump right into this. And first of all, I want to introduce our first guest. He is the one who literally entertains us at the Ronald Reagan dinner at CPAC. And I just want to play a quick clip from this guest, Larry OConnor.
We got a brand new mask protocol. This is a good one. I like this one. Again, I'm setting an example. You know, Anthony Fauci is like, he's a child of the 70s, right? So he loved the mood ring. This is like a mood mask, right? So your basic mask. And then if you're happy, but then if you're sad, if you're not feeling well, this one I don't understand why this has to be part of the protocol, but it's, you know what? It's the new F word, you know? Think about it. Fauci me, Fauci you.
The new F word, Schlapp.
I love it. Larry OConnor always entertains the crowd at the Reagan dinner at CPAC. That was from our most recent CPAC in Orlando, where the greatest honor was to have Catherine Limbaugh with us. But as wonderful and serious, really, as her message was, Larry made us laugh.
He did make us laugh. Larry OConnor, radio host and columnist, but you have all these titles, so why don't you introduce yourself, Larry?
I do. No, I appreciate that, and thank you. You know, we did need to laugh. We need to laugh more these days. Yeah. I do a talk show on KABC in Los Angeles and also WMAL in DC, your hometown radio station. And I'm also a columnist over at townhall.com. And thanks for letting me be a part of this today, you guys.
Of course.
And you have a very special slot on WMAL. You are the lead-in to the great one, Mark Levin, and you actually knew Rush Limbaugh very well, and you have Mercy and I on your show, so you're a special person to us, Larry OConnor.
But I only knew him the way we all knew him. I just listened to him. I traded emails with him a couple of times when I worked for Andrew Breitbart back in the day, because Andrew knew him really well. But I never got to have a relationship with Rush, sadly. But I feel like I had a relationship with him because he's been a part of my life for 30 years. And for the last 4 years, I've been fortunate enough to be able to pick up his audience because I'm on right after him. So it's I'm still feeling the loss, I assure you. But we're excited about Dan Bongino coming in late May. He'll be taking up that slot on our radio station.
Yeah, well, there is a lot to get to. First of all, we saw that our former president, Donald J. Trump, released a statement yesterday.
Yeah, you did.
Talk about the new F word. He really felt very strongly speaking up about Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx. He called them two self-promoters trying to reinvent history to cover for their bad instincts and faulty recommendations, which, quote, I fortunately almost always overturned. Yeah. So let's talk about the new F word. Larry, let's get your reaction.
Obviously, guys, President Trump is like the rest of us, and we're sick and tired of this mother Fauci, and decided that he wanted to unleash a little angst on him. I mean, it's so funny that Trump gets this reputation of being this loose cannon, and he's constantly, firing, and it's the seat of his pants, and he doesn't think things through. I think he's been incredibly restrained when it comes to these two in particular, because over the last 10 months at least, when all of the models didn't come through the way Dr. Birx a year ago told us 2 million dead, all those models were bunk, and we knew it pretty early on. And the fact that Trump didn't release a statement like this in June is actually an amazing sign of discipline. And I think that it was pushed to the brink with Fauci trying to claim credit for the vaccine this week. And my God, it was shameless. I mean, you guys have been in DC for a while. You're used to shameless self-promotion and empty suits sort of pushing themselves and blowing themselves up. But this guy is the new Wikipedia example of that. And Trump had enough. Good for him. We've all had enough.
Matt, what did you think?
President Trump. I love the fact that they ban him from social media. So he's like sending out faxes to the world, but then all of his allies and reporters who miss him, by the way, there you have to admit, they all miss him. They all tweet out these statements. So it's almost like he's banned, but now he's got even more credibility because he's got dozens of people sending out these old-fashioned faxes or mimeographs. I don't know what we call these things, but
right,
exactly. It's like the Morse code. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
he runs it on the ditto machine first, I think. He does the ditto machine, and then everybody in his office smells it first because it's got that ditto smell. Remember?
You know what I'm struggling with, Larry, is I think one of the recommendations that Dr. Fauci brought up as well was that children shouldn't play together until they're vaccinated.
What a ding
So
dong.
we've gone from like don't wear a mask to wear one mask to wear two masks till if you're vaccinated, you can't eat indoors, you can't really see people. But then Biden is saying, hey, let's do fireworks on July 4th, but yet the children can't play together. It's insanity.
But
this is not science anymore.
But remember, he can throw out the first pitch, or as the president called it yesterday in the statement, which was wonderful, that Tony Fauci told me he was an athlete, but he can't even throw a ball halfway to the home plate. In fact, it was a roller. After he threw that roller, and those of us who were in Little League know exactly what that is because I've thrown a few rollers, he then goes to the stands with his mask on his chin while he sits with the crowd that he's with. I mean, what? I mean, come on.
It's all performative, guys. It really is. And people have just lost faith in this. I got to say, it's so disappointing and discouraging because I remember a year ago, it was the end of March, and President Trump said, listen, this is a serious problem. And we did see some serious problems in Andrew Cuomo's New York because of the mismanagement up there, certainly. And we patriotic Americans, we care about our fellow citizens, we care about our neighbors. We were willing to make this temporary sacrifice because we were assured by the experts, Dr. Fauci and Birx, that it would be temporary. We'd flatten the curve, we'd slow the spread, and everything would be fine. Now we've reached the point, as you just said, Mercy, our kids aren't allowed to play with each other. We've got thousands of unvaccinated, some of them COVID positive children, unaccompanied, pouring in through the border. There doesn't seem to be any concern about all of them jammed into these holding tanks that Biden is doing 3 times capacity of. No one worries about that, but our kids can't go to a classroom or even play in a park together. We are angry, we are sick of it, and we're done because every time we're told to listen to the scientists, amazing, the science changes. And then we're told, well, you know, part of science is learning from our mistakes. We're the ones who are suffering through all of this.
Fauci you, Larry.
Hey, Fauci me, Fauci you.
But, you know, then you've had CDC change its guidelines from 6 feet to 3 feet when it comes to the kids.
Yes. And my favorite part of that, Mercy, when they changed it from 6 feet to 3 feet, what did the teachers union say? What did Randy Weingartner say, the person who's in charge of the teachers union? We disagree with that. We think it should be 6 feet. So follow the science right up until the point it hurts our cause to keep the schools shut down, and then screw the science. We're going to do whatever we want.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly frustrating, but I still see a lot of thank you, Dr. Fauci signs in our neighborhood. I don't know about you.
Oh, isn't that nice? And they're all going to private school, aren't they?
No
amazing
kidding.
how that works.
Let's shift gears here to the vaccine passport. So this topic is.
I'm going to get madder. I'm getting madder. You guys have me in a very bad mood. I'm going to get in a worse mood.
Keep laughing, Matt. We got to keep smiling through it. I promise you.
Okay, so I'm going to smile while I read you this slide.
This is the only passport I need, by the way. I don't need no vaccine passport.
That is fantastic. Maybe that will qualify. But it looks like a Washington Post story came out saying the Biden administration and private companies are working to develop a standard way of handling credentials, often referred to as vaccine passports, that would allow Americans to prove that they have been vaccinated against the novel coronavirus, or as Matt would call it, Chinese corona, as businesses try to reopen. Let me start, Matt. I'm going to start with you on this because this is a very hot topic.
This is one thing I'm not doing, Larry. I'm not doing this. It's not going to happen.
You're like one of the Manson family now. It's amazing.
This is like
we need a wifey.
This is biblical. This is like you have to be marked with a sign to be in good company. What's wrong with us?
Yeah.
Larry, go. I think you've shocked Larry.
I believe I was like, okay, what part of this thing is going to go viral? And now I know. Now, Matt, you have every reason to be frustrated and angry about this. But although I think that if we were smart, we would parlay something out of this. Okay, so everyone gets a vaccine passport. Could we add a photograph to it and then use it for identification when we go to vote? Could we maybe get a twofer here? Because I was told that it's impossible to get any kind of government issued document that proves we are who we say we are, or that it was very hard for certain minorities or people. It's the hypocrisy here is despicable.
But also, Larry, what really is annoying about it is these are the Trump vaccines.
No.
We're not against the vaccine. It's
of course not.
Thing. We've made history with these vaccines. The president and his team deserve great credit. Alex Azar, all of them. Eric Hargan for these vaccines. But they're trying to make it sound like we're against the vaccines. No, we created the vaccines. And now they're trying to walk us, say that, oh, you can't be in polite society without the vaccine. But here's what we believe as conservatives. You get to make your medical choices. Yeah, they lecture us on medical choices every day of the calendar year. But all of a sudden, the vaccine, you don't get a choice.
Yeah, my body, my choice only apparently pertains to killing an innocent baby before she's born. And that's, again, the hypocrisy that we're seeing here and the double standard. But listen, we need to keep talking about and pushing back. And again, going back to the science. I just spoke yesterday on the show with Dr. Marty McCary, Johns Hopkins University. Not a crazy white right-winger, not some guy, with a tinfoil hat trying to stay in Idaho and block himself from the rest of the society. He said, this is unnecessary. You vaccinate enough people, and at some point you reach this level of herd immunity. He thinks it's going to be by the end of April. You don't need to have some kind of passport to prove that you've already, done what the government has forced you to do. And guess what? If you decide not to get vaccinated and somehow you get the virus, you've made a choice. You suffer the consequences. That's what this country's always been
quickly,
about.
I'll just say, we're going to have a CPAC Texas. We'll be announcing the dates pretty soon. Once again, there are reasons why people can't get the vaccine, medical reasons. And guess what? It's not my business. So we would not want to say, well, you can't come to a CPAC event unless you've had the vaccine. What we say to people is make responsible adult decisions, and you make decisions for your children. And that's how America has been governed for over 200 years.
Can I just add one other thing on this, though? Because you said this is going to be, the government is suggesting it. The Biden administration is suggesting it, but they're not going to mandate it. They'll let the private sector do it. This is exactly how they censor us on social media. Of course, the government doesn't censor you on social media, but they signal to the big tech companies, if you allow this kind of language or these kind of stories or this kind of idea permeating through social media, we might have to think about government regulations. The government doesn't have to censor you. Then Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, they just take it upon themselves to censor you. And that's exactly with this passport. Government's not going to issue the passport, but Costco will make sure you've got something. Airlines will make sure you've got something, baseball stadiums. And so it's not the government, it's the corporations doing the government's bidding, which is something we should be very concerned about too.
So just one quick
note. I'm talking a lot. Why am I talking so much?
Because you're excited.
Great.
You're
great.
Oh, please, you're just Fauciing me up, and I don't think
totally Fauciing you up. But here's another just quick point here is that so we're going to recommend or require vaccine passports, but when it comes to voter IDs, let's just throw those out the window. It makes no sense. It shows how illogical these leftists are. It shows that they care about one thing, and that's control of us as individuals. And it's why we need to stop. But we actually are going to be right back because Matt's distracting me with this big X mark.
Yeah, we've got to get rid of that.
So don't leave us there. We literally are going to be right back. Okay.
I'm cleaning up. Is it working, sweetheart?
You look great, sweetie.
Okay,
you
good.
look great. But we've got Larry OConnor with us. We want to continue our discussion. We just did a big whole Fauci segment, but moving on to, I think, a really interesting story that went viral. In fact, I thought it was very, very disturbing. We have Lil Nas X. He started this whole selling what they call the Satan shoes, okay? Where it's for over $1,000. You can buy these Satan shoes that actually have a drop of human blood in them. Nike got so we all thought it was Nike that was pulling this publicity stunt, but actually they were not involved. They modified the Nike Air Max 97s with a pentagram,
upside down pentagram,
yeah,
which is
pendant.
Satanic sign.
That's right. And then, of course, adding this one drop of human blood to it. So the Nike company, they took legal action. They filed a trademark infringement and dilution complaint against this CHF, which I believe is the designer of these Satan shoes, and really said that they do not have a relationship with this rapper and singer. So anyways, it was produced without Nike's approval or authorization, and they are not connected with this project. So I was about to throw all my Nike shoes away, but I didn't.
Well, I already did because they wouldn't allow the Betsy Ross flag on the shoe, but that's a whole other conversation. But this is really alarming, Larry.
It is. I mean, listen, it's a commentary on the degradation of our culture, obviously, the glorification of Satan and evil, and it's despicable. And it just reminds us as parents that we need to give that much more extra effort to make sure that our children are either shielded from this garbage or at least are able to arm themselves and be warriors against this culture war. But I'm also a little torn on this. I mean, let's face it, as this thing plays out, there could very well be, it was a limited edition, right? They only did 666 of the shoes.
Yeah, 666 pairs.
Yeah.
So for $1,000 a pop.
Let's think this through now. This, if this plays out, I mean, there are going to be 666 idiotic, evil, horrible Satanists who want this thing $1,000 poorer each. And this guy has learned a great lesson, sadly, in capitalism. I mean, it is nice to know that people are thinking this far outside of the box to exploit the evil ignorance of people and bilking them of their money. The raw free marketeer in me actually, in a weird way, admires it. But frankly, I still think that the problem is Nike. Nike's going to grandstand and get a whole lot of pats on the back because they said, no, this is too far. What about the thousands and thousands of vulnerable and exploited Chinese laborers right now, slave laborers who are exploited for pennies right now in work camps making these tennis shoes that Nike sells on the shelf by the thousands for $100 a piece? I mean, what's more evil in the long run? Frankly, I wish that Nike actually showed a little bit of concern about the human beings in China who are being devastated right now because of their greed.
Great point, Larry. And I just think that they should do a pair of angel shoes with a drop of holy water in them. I think it would be great. Okay.
Oh my God, let's do it now. Why don't we do this? We could see.
Because we might get sued if we do it. What are we talking about?
Larry, don't you understand? Conservatives are basically just people who love America are going to have to create all their own products. We'll have to make our own tennis shoes and T-shirts and everything else.
I'll be honest.
We'll make those in Kansas, not China, okay?
That's true. That's fair.
Larry O'Connor.
When I heard the Satan thing, I was sure it was a Lincoln Project deal. I thought they were just raising more money for their thing.
Which has now become the Republican Accountability Project, which we'll be talking about very soon as well. Larry O'Connor, you're a great voice for freedom. You're a wonderful friend of CPAC. We love having you on CPAC Now. We love you just generally. And thanks, everybody. We will be right back.
I love the Fauci out of you guys.
Welcome back to CPAC Now. We're talking about the importance of faith in America and what a troubling year it's been on so many fronts. Obviously, politically, obviously, the whole question of what is truth? Is truth transcendent and eternal? Or is it relative? Can people just decide what their truth is? Is it about my truth and your truth? And, truth could be one thing on Tuesday, could be something else on Wednesday. And we have so many great guests who are faith leaders, including today, Mercedes.
Yeah, it was really wonderful to have with us Rabbi Yitz Tedler, who also is helps us out here at American Conservative Union, a Jewish leader, someone who we love, that we are so proud that we have an opportunity to work with him. And Rabbi, we are so thrilled to have you on our show today.
Thank you. Thank you both. First of all, I want to, on behalf of the hundreds and possibly thousands of Jews who have found their political home in ACU and in CPAC, I want to thank you both for your leadership in being inclusive and making everyone feel extremely welcome.
Well, Rabbi, let me start. Right now you're in Passover. You're celebrating Passover, and I'd love for you to share with our CPAC family what's the significance of Passover.
Sure. So today is actually day number 3 of Passover. We actually just completed the first 2 days. I myself, I'm more traditionally observant. So let me tell you what I did, and it's been pretty incredible. I just went 72 hours without using technology. which is pretty incredible. And it's something
Wow.
that I think, yeah, it's something that you might want to try. I mean, on a typical week, we do 25 hours for the Sabbath,
Right.
and then we had, boom, we went straight into 2 days of Passover. So talk about freedom from technology. You know, Passover is the holiday of freedom. And so many, I'm sure most of our listeners are familiar with the book of Exodus, which is, right, the biblical storyline starts with Genesis, obviously with Adam, and then continues through the story of Noah, and then Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And as you exit the book of Genesis, so to speak, there's only a small band of people that believe in this notion that there's this one God who wants to bring good to humanity. And then the children of Jacob are enslaved in ancient Egypt. And then the book of Exodus begins with God choosing to take his people out from ancient Egypt, and he does so through a series of spectacular miracles, the 10 plagues, which I'm sure you're familiar with, eventually bringing them through the sea, splitting of the Sea of Reeds, and then culminating, of course, in the giving of the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, which I think it's fair to say that the 10 Commandments are the cornerstone of what we consider Western civilization. So this is very significant, not only to the Jewish people. Obviously, it's recounting a miracle that occurred literally to our ancestors, but for all of humanity. I mean, the story of slaughtering the pagan gods, so to speak, of saying it's time for humanity to live with a higher understanding of who God is and what he wants for us is the story of humanity. And it's a springtime holiday, and so it kind of marks. It happened 3,300 years ago. It marks a springtime for faith, for all faiths, really.
Yeah, it's how do you square this concept of a loving God with a bit of a vengeful God? The whole Passover story, killing of the innocents. How does that work in your faith tradition?
That's a great question. So, there's this slogan, which I think a lot of our listeners will be familiar with, which says, "Let my people go." Right? Moses goes to Pharaoh and speaks on behalf of God, "Let my people go." Now, a lot of people forget that the sentence continues, "Let my people go so that they may serve me." Right? And as we know, as Americans, freedom without this higher being that we are answering to is not true freedom at all. And so your question is a good one. It's something that obviously all theologians struggle with, but ultimately, the God wants the best for humanity, and he kind of sometimes has to guide us to putting us on the right path, so to speak.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Let's talk about the traditions of the meals are very important. Obviously, we know Passover is called the Festival of Unleavened Bread. Explain to our viewers why that is so. What is the meaning behind it? Matzo, as you know, you go to the grocery store, you see it. Explain to us how that works. And I know there's so many prayers associated to when the family comes together and the friends, as well as reading from Exodus, going back to those traditions that are so important, teaching the next generation as to why Passover is such an important holiday to observe.
Sure. So the cornerstone ritual event of Passover is what's called the Seder. The Passover Seder took place Saturday night. Actually, here in the States, we do 2 nights, Saturday night and Sunday night, and it can range from a 3 to 6 hour extravaganza, a combination of ritual, food, just family togetherness, and it's really built around the next generation. It's built around the children. It's a storytelling event, which is very unique, and it's kind of a series of riddles. The text part is a series of riddles, questions, answers, trying to get the kids involved, and it's worked. I mean, my own kids, my wife and I have 5 kids. They stayed up. 3 of them stayed up past midnight. They made it that far, and they got to the food, thankfully. But the whole idea is that we're taking a story which was passed down, and it's a story which is ancient, but it's modern. The idea that there are people out there who stand, unfortunately, for evil, and they try, in the case of the Jewish people, to wipe out the Jewish people, but they try to stand against this notion that there's this divine being that has a higher calling for humanity. And in every generation, they rise up, and it's our responsibility to remember that and be able to acknowledge that. And we talk about throughout history how various forces have tried to stop us from transmitting this tradition. I'll tell you one anecdote that we share at my family's Passover Seder. Like I mentioned, the Passover Seder can be 3 to 5 hours long. So there's one part in the Seder which is actually tucked in the middle, and it's a shame they don't say it at the beginning. It says, everything we're saying can be boiled down into these 3 words. You just have to say these 3 words and you're technically okay. And the rest is kind of like commentary, And the 3 words are, you have to remember matzah, which is the unleavened bread that you mentioned, which the Jews left ancient Egypt in haste, and therefore we eat matzah. Maror, which is a Hebrew word which means bitter herbs. We actually eat bitter herbs at the Passover Seder. And they remind us of the tears that were shed by the Jews who were enslaved. And then the last is Pesach, which is referring to the Passover lamb, which was an offering, a sacrifice that was brought in ancient Egypt by the Jews as they left. And so my family shares a story. I had a great aunt who was raised under the early years of communist Russia. And, we all know what communism tried to wipe out the faith of the people that lived under their iron boot, essentially. And my great aunt recounted that when she was a young child, they forced her into a public school. And they were basically indoctrinated to hate everything that has to do with faith. And they went to such an extent that they went so far as to have agents of the whatever it was, I guess it was the KGB or a precursor to the KGB, looking through people's windows on Passover night, making sure that they did not gather for a Passover Seder because they didn't want the next generation to learn the story of faith. And so my great aunt remembers vividly as a 5-year-old, I think in the 20s or 30s, remembers, coming home. They would give them extracurricular activities on Passover Eve to make sure they weren't home in time to have a Passover Seder. And her father would gathered her and her brother and said, just repeat these 3 words after me: matzah, maror, Pesach. Just repeat those 3, and that's the minimum. And eventually they had to flee to the United States, which is of course a place where faith is celebrated. And it's something that we're extremely grateful for.
Yes, I know. As we talk about you saying the American Jews have a home with the American Conservative Union, quickly summarize this conversation by talking about how those Jews that have this kind of conservative view of politics view the current political situation in America.
Sure. Great question. Obviously, we're very concerned about, when we look at foreign policy, right? Passover is about, we say in every generation, somebody arises. And actually, that was the title of the panel that I moderated at CPAC. And so we're always on the lookout for anti-Semitism. I think the most overt and explicit major source of anti-Semitism right now is the government of Iran. And they speak openly about the big Satan, the United States, and the little Satan of Israel, and how they want to commit genocide against the world's only Jewish state. So when we celebrate Passover, we can't help but look at the ancient text and look at the modern reality and be concerned, absolutely, about certain moves this administration is making, which seem not to appreciate fully the grave danger being posed by modern anti-Semites. And certainly by the regime of Iran and others.
Right. Well, Yitz, our prayers are with you and with the Jewish people, and especially with this great relationship that has been developed with so many Jewish leaders and the American Conservative Union. Our Easter prayers will join your Passover prayers in making sure these bonds stay strong.
We appreciate that. Thank you. We love you as well, and your partnership is very much appreciated.
Well, we thank you, Rabbi, for sharing with us your personal story. I think the story about your great aunt is just so, it really touched my heart, because I feel that, we take for granted our religious liberties in America. And I feel that as we've seen more government encroaching on our religious liberties, we see a Democrat Party, far left party, who absolutely disrespects religion. We are going to continue every day together to fight against a government who's trying to stop us from being able to freely worship and love God. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. And remember to follow us on CPAC on Facebook, at CPAC on Twitter, Instagram, so we can all stay connected. And, you know, for us, we want to continue to talk about these important topics, but also ensure that you're getting to meet these wonderful people who we get to work with on a daily basis. So thank you so much, and we'll see you tomorrow.